coaches. That's different than coaching supervision. Mentor coaching is about providing feedback to coaches on their coaching skills to see to what extent what they are doing is close or far from the expectations from ICF or EMCC around the credential that the coach is applying. So the job of the mentor coach is to listen to a recording and provide feedback. So we ran with Janet at that time, trained Ram, me, Leda, who were in the same team. We were trained as mentor coaches. The goal was for us to become effective at providing feedback to coaches so they can go to the next level of expertise. So the focus in mentor coaching is skills, is what we are doing. And the way that the mentor coach works is by listening or in presence or listening and recording, and by listening the recording, providing feedback to what extent the performance of the coach is or not close to the ICF standards. And the standards are different for somebody who's starting ACC, for a PCC, and for MCC. So in coaching training schools, the mentor coaches provide feedback so the students who are getting trained as coaches know what they need to do to be more effective. Now that's mentor coaching. Coaching supervision is different because in coaching supervision, the supervisor does not need to listen the recording. In coaching supervision, the coach brings to coaching supervision a client and discuss a client. So basically, coaching supervision is like coaching the coach on his coaching specifically. Are you following me? So supervision is coaching the coach on his or her coaching, and there is a systemic perspective. Why is a systemic perspective? Because when we're working as supervisor, there are three systems in place. There is the system client-coach, and there is a system coach-supervisor, and there is an overall system. So if we can see it visually, we will see like a system that is the coach, client, coach, supervisor, and then there is like an intersection, and then the overall system of the context where they work together. In the system, coach, coachee, or client coach, we will see that when the coach brings to supervision a case, the coach will explore and ask questions about the client. Who is the client? And in coaching supervision, the client, even though he's not present, has a very important role. Different than in coaching, where in coaching, when the client talk about other people, this is secondary. If a client in coaching talk about the boss or partner or friend or colleague, it's important to understand, but we don't want to focus a lot on third parties. We want to focus on the client. So when the client keeps talking about his wife, we say, okay, let's not talk more about your wife, let's talk about you. Okay, are you with me here? Are you following me? In coaching supervision, we want to talk about the client.
Damien, I think there was a comment saying that it's a little bit confusing for them. So one of the things I just would like to say is, Damien will expand on that later. Mentoring is primarily about competencies. You are being honed in more on your competencies, the ICF's 11 competencies, whatever. And whereas supervision is a much larger perspective, it's about the coaching process, it's about the way that you and the client interact. And that is why, in a sense, it's very confusing, especially in the Indian context, because we are not even familiar about that aspect. When we talk about any kind of overview, as Damien is putting it, that overview is primarily in terms of somebody listening in to us, a conversation or a recording and saying, hey, you have to improve on this competency or that competency. That's purely mentoring. And supervision is about maybe a number of other things. It could be about logistical issues. It's about your own confusion in terms of how to deal with confidentiality with a client or a sponsor. It could be about how the process is. It's almost like in a psychological kind of therapist and counselors and so on, they have another person to whom they go back to once in a while to be able to sort of address their concerns. I mean, I'm trying to put this because in the Indian context, supervision is as yet, I would say, reasonably unfamiliar. It was very unfamiliar to you, but familiar to me about a couple of years ago. Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah.
And Ram, that's the idea, is to start getting familiarized with something that is new and different. So if you don't understand it at the beginning, it's okay. No, we know in coaching, it's not all about understanding everything. But let me go back to the definition. How do we define supervision? So I am seeing here somebody said that mentor coaching is clear, and what is not clear is what is coaching supervision. So let me go back and let me define it one more time. So coaching supervision is a partnership between the coach and the coach supervisor to explore the practice of the coach for the benefit of the client and the coach. And how it works is basically the coach brings to coaching supervision challenges or themes that they want to explore with the supervisor. Most of the time, the way it works is that the coach prepare a case. So bring a case, one of the clients, to discuss during coaching supervision. So for example, in each case, in each session, the coach, before they meet with the supervisor, prepare to do a presentation. And in the presentation, they think, okay, who is the client? So this is what I was starting to explain before. We're talking about different systems. So we are going to explore who is the client, what are the interventions, what are the things that the coach has done with the client. And many times, this is only what's happening in coaching supervision. The coach supervisor explored with the coach who is the client, what happened with the client, and what were the interventions. And then the coach explored what they have done that worked well and what they may do differently next time. Okay, so that will be one possibility. If we keep going deeper in coaching supervision, we want to start exploring also the relationship. What is the relationship between the coach and the client? If we keep going a little bit deeper, we may start exploring also the who of the coach. What's happening to the coach? What are the coach reactions? What are the emotional reactions? And the kind of themes or topics that come up in supervision include topics of, I don't know what to do with this client. The client is stuck, is not moving forward. We have been talking about a few sessions and the client is not following up. I am identifying with the client. I feel that what happened to the client is the same thing that happened to me. How can, and I don't think that I am very effective with this client. It can be an ethical issue. The client is somebody that I know, and there is an issue that I am not sure how. It's an ethical dilemma. So ethical dilemmas are very appropriate for coaching supervision. It can be an area where the coach feels that doesn't have skills or feel insecure, so needs some confidence. So work with the coaching supervision to build that confidence. So these are some of the topics. Some of the topic is whenever the coach has a challenge, has a space to go to explore the challenge with somebody else. Ram, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, Damien, I'm opening up a question for Manya. She had asked a question about the systemic nature of that. And later, Anant and other people have asked about how is confidentiality protected? Is the supervisor is there in the room with the coach and the client? The answer is no, but then you would explain that. So Manya, would you like to ask your question? Explain that, please.
Myself. Oh, okay, thanks. I was just wondering because it was, I'm very curious about the systemic view, and I think that that's what you were talking about, Damien, at one point, and that's when the confusing word came up in the chat box. Mm-hmm. You know, there's the relationship of the coach to the client, and there's the relationship of the supervisor to the coach. Mm-hmm. in helping them have their work be more effective. Mm-hmm. with the coachee, and then you know, in that way the supervisor is systemically related to both the coach and the client. And it seemed like you were talking about more, you started talking about third parties of the client, where the coach doesn't really focus on that. You bring the focus back to the coach and the client. I was just wondering what that web of systemic relationships is.
Mania, I think that what I said is when you're in coaching and the client bring other issues and they are not focusing on themselves, as coaches, we want to bring the attention back to the client, to what's happening with the client, with the issue that they are bringing. Okay, that's one thing.
Okay, so it was just that. Okay.
So that.
I
Now,
thought there was more. Okay.
Systemically, in coaching supervision, we do want to see differently that in coaching. In coaching supervision, we really want to see and pay more attention to third parties. So that can be a difference. That can be a difference. So the idea is that there is, in coaching, there is also a systemic perspective. But in this coaching supervision, there are three systems, as you said. The system client, coach, the system coach, supervisor, and the overall system. So for example, if I am working, let's say, Mania, that you hire me and I am your supervisor, and you're a coach and I work with you. And you are part of an organization, and the organization is the sponsor and is paying you. So when we work in supervision, we are going to be talking about your client, but at some point in the system that you are part of, the organization that is the sponsor, the organization that you work for, is going to have an influence in the work that you do as a coach. So that's the third party, that's other things that are in the system, in the external system, that you also want to pay attention. Also, for example, if you work with somebody from a different culture, I don't know where you are located, I don't know if you're located in India, where are you located, but you may also work with clients from different cultures or different organizations. So these are external factors that also are going to play in the coaching supervision that you want to pay attention as a supervisor. Because if you don't pay attention to that, you may lose your effectiveness when you are supervising somebody. So going back to the systems, the kind of things that the supervisor is paying attention. So now I am going to talk with my hat as a supervisor. So when I am supervising, these are the things that I am looking for. In the system client coach, I am looking at asking the coach, who is the client? Tell me about the client. Tell me about what you have done in coaching supervision. What were your interventions? And what are your questions about your interventions? Tell me about your relationship. How is your relationship with your client? And many times there are unconscious dynamics that we are not aware that are playing when we're working as coaches with our clients. And many times we don't have a space to explore them. Let me give you an example. I was working with a coach, and the coach shared with me that she has a challenge with a client who is a millennial, a young, 20 years, that has some challenges, cannot keep a job. And then she said, and do you know what? He reminds me of my son. He had the same problem, the same challenges that my son. So I don't know, is that millennials are all like that? Is an issue of millennials? Or is an issue of this guy only, and my son also had the same problem? So in her head, some way, it was overlapping. When she was seeing at this kid, she was seeing her son. So to the extent that you can realize that and have more clarity about that relationship, you can be more effective as a coach. But if you don't have a supervisor, you don't talk about that, you will never realize that may be playing in the relationship. So we also want to explore what's happening to the coach during the session. Not only the relationship, but also who is the coach and how the coach is showing up to the client. And when we talk about the relationship between the coach and the supervisor, the second system, we may see that there are parallel processes. And the idea of parallel process is when there are some dynamics and patterns that happen in the relationship between the client and the coach, repeat in the relationship between the coach and the supervisor. And that can be very interesting to explore in supervision. So in supervision, the supervisor also explores the relationship that they have as supervisor with the coach. So there, many times, the coach will behave and will react in ways that the supervisor can give feedback to the coach about what's going on in the session that may be the same way that they show up with their clients. So that can be very beneficial to the coach. So basically, in coaching supervision, what we do is we reflect on our work, we reflect on our clients, we reflect on what we have done or not done, or what we can do in the future in a different way. we look at our blind spots. What are our blind spots as coaches? So basically the idea of coaching supervision, that is very new in India, very new in Asia in general, and very new in Latin America, what is very exciting for me, because in the same way that now I'm talking about coaching supervision, where nobody knows about that, I was talking about ICF in Latin America, where nobody knew what was ICF. So for me, it's very exciting and challenging. And when people say, I don't understand, well, the same thing happened at the beginning with the credentials. I don't understand why we need to know the 11 core competencies, or we don't understand how they work. And it's a good way to start, from not understanding to slowly by slowly having clarity on new ideas or new concepts or new things. So I want to invite everybody in this call, now as Ram said, we have 47 people, is to consider the possibility to work with a supervisor and reflect on your job and see what do you want to do to go to the next level of efficiency as a coach. And sometimes you can do that with a peer, with a colleague, but ideally you want to do it with somebody with more experience. Somebody you want to do that with somebody who have been coaching for a long time, because they may be able to see things that somebody who does not have a lot of experience cannot see. So the idea is that you're going to work with a supervisor, you want to work with somebody who's a PCC at least. So that will be one of the requirements that I would suggest. There is not a requirement from ICF. ICF doesn't have any requirements, or doesn't have any credential for coaching supervisors, but the EMCC has a credential for coaching supervisors. I just got mine. So Ram, I am very proud that I have my credential with the European Mentor and Coaching Council, and I also developed a program to train coaching supervisors. And I also got the recognition from EMCC because ICF does not do that. I applied for CCEUs to provide CCEUs for getting trained coaching supervisors, but ICF does not provide a credential yet on coaching supervision, but EMCC does, and it's something new, cutting edge, where, Ram, there are a lot of opportunities, because the story of that guy who go to a country where nobody uses, there are two people that go to this country that nobody uses shoes. So one said, oh, nobody uses shoes here, we cannot sell any shoes. And the other said, nobody uses shoes here, we have a lot of opportunity to sell shoes. So coaching supervision is the same thing. Nobody gets coaching supervision yet. So it's a great opportunity to develop for coaches here with a lot of experience. I highly recommend that you consider that, because eventually in India, it's also going to develop that need for coaches to have that space for reflection and grow and learning. And that's the reason why Coach Source also hired me to do a coaching supervision program now, because in Europe, companies are asking not only if the coach is credentialed, but also who is the supervisor. And many companies in Europe are also asking the coach a recommendation from the supervisor for the job. So the supervisor has to write a recommendation and to say, we recommend that person because of whatever. So it's interesting how the market is shifting. So that in Europe is much more developed than in the United States or Latin America or Asia. But that's the reason why Coach Source now hire me to do certification on supervision for them, because the market is asking for that too.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. A couple of other questions, Damien. There's Anant, I'll unmute him. He's got a question on confidentiality. If you take a look at the...
Yeah. Well, confidentiality is very important. So when you bring a case to coaching, you don't need to say the name of the person. You don't need to say the company that they work for. So the idea is that by not disclosing any information about the client, you have to be sure that there is no name or no way for the supervisor to know who the person is. So that's one part. The second possibility is that you ask for permission to your client and you say, I have coaching supervision and I work with a supervisor to reflect on my job. Do you have a problem with that? So you may ask permission also to your client when you're doing that. And then when you work with your supervisor, you don't disclose any information about who the client is. These are the two things that you need to pay attention to.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the other question was about coaching conversation. Definitely, coaching supervision is a coaching conversation. Like coaching is a conversation, coaching supervision is also a conversation. And in this conversation, the supervisor may or may not have heard the coach coaching. In mentoring, it is a requirement for the coach who is working as a mentor coach. It's a requirement to listen to the recording to provide feedback, but in supervision is not. Supervision is based on the challenge that the coach brings to supervision. So when you listen to a coaching supervision session, it sounds like a coaching session. It's like coaching the coach on their coaching. I'm going to repeat that. We can say that coaching supervision is coaching the coach on their coaching, and a couple of differences too now between coaching supervision and coaching is that results are less important. In coaching, we want the client want to get results. The reason why they're coming to coaching is they want to do something different. They want to be more effective in some area. They want to do something and you can measure progress. And in coaching, you expect results. In coaching supervision is not so much about results and action. That's less important. The most important is the exploration. The most important in coaching supervision is the exploration. And ideally, we want the coach to use that insight and apply it to their coaching. But there is more value in the reflection and in the exploration. And there is less value or less concern about the actions specifically. What exactly the coach is going to do. So these are a couple of differences. And also the systemic approach where we really give in coaching supervision more importance to the stakeholders, the different people who are involved, the context has a higher importance in supervision than in coaching. Coaching is important too, but in coaching supervision has even more importance.
Damien, what comes up for me, because you mentioned about EMCC and you've also got a supervisory credential, which I'm looking at for EMCC. One important difference is that when I applied for the EMCC credential, unlike in ICF, which is just about a recording, they put me through the grill in terms of reflections and case study, where there was a much deeper exploration into how I looked at the competencies. Now we have about 12 people in India who are PCCs through Kocharia. We are working towards the SP level at EMCC. Now, the point that you are making here, therefore, is that in supervision, one of the primary goals is to create a greater awareness within the coach about the process, what's happening within him as he is coaching. Is that what it is? Can you expand on that a bit, please?
Yeah, definitely. So the idea is like when we work as coaches with our clients and we explore on the who is the client in coaching sessions. And when we talk about who is the client, we mean how is the client thinking, what are their needs, what are their emotions. We want to explore that during coaching. Not only what they are doing or what they want to do, but who they are being. The who of the coach is how the client is showing up in their lives. So in coaching supervision, it's the same thing. We want to explore the who of the coach. We want to explore how the coach is showing up for their clients and what they are seeing and not seeing in the way that they're showing up to their clients. Sometimes it can be judgmental. We want to think that coaches are not judgmental, but many times coaches are judgmental, and they would use a tone of voice or they would say things that may not be very effective. So in coaching supervision, we want to create awareness so the coach can be clear about how effective or not effective is being with different clients. And it can be, for example, that the coach is very effective with some clients and not so effective with other clients. So for example, one of my colleagues in supervision, when I was supervising her, she was telling me that when she coaches people, in general, she's very effective, but if she has some, particularly women, that are very strong personalities, sometimes it's difficult for her because unconsciously that reminds her mother. Her mother was like a very strong personality, very strong woman. So when she has to coach women like that, for her it's more difficult than even coaching men that are like that. So like in coaching supervision, we can identify what is it that is difficult for her and what are the best strategies for her to apply in these cases. But that requires to bring some awareness because, Ram, if there is, as you're saying, if there is not awareness, we may behave in ways that are not very effective. So by being aware about what are our challenges, what are our weaknesses, what are the kind of clients that are more difficult for us, we can be more effective when we work with them. So that requires also vulnerability. So here it's a very important part, because a coach in supervision feels vulnerable, feels like a little bit naked, because he's bringing what is not working or what is difficult. And for some people, that's very difficult. But if you as a coach cannot do that, then you are not as effective as a coach. If you as a coach cannot get naked in some way and bring in your difficulties and challenges, then you may not be as effective as coach working with your clients, because you may not be seeing what you are not doing or doing that is not effective.
Damien, if you see on the chat box, at least one of the questions from Sagar, I can unmute him. He still has, I think, basically the confusion between mentoring and coaching. Maybe it's worthwhile. I'm sure others probably have that as well. So I am unmuting Sagar, and you might like to explain that.
Yeah. Thank you, Ram. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually the thing is, maybe the confusion still persists, because when my mentor coach is, when he is like when we are doing these practice sessions, like I'm coaching the client, so he's also there on the call, and he is listening to the call, and he also talks about the competencies that I have displayed and how I could have been better on that. But he also talks about the process and what could have been done better. And he kind of gives his inputs. Oh, why did I ask that question? Why I did not ask that question? So I think that's why I'm having that confusion.
Sure. I'll let Damien answer that question.
Yeah, sometimes there can be an overlap. Sometimes some people do both at the same time. They do mentor coaching and supervision. So when they start exploring you and what is happening to you, then that is more coaching supervision. And there are some mentors that also do that. So for example, when we were trained as mentor coaches, we were not going in that direction. Most of the mentor coaching was specific and very focused on competencies. What you have done or not done. And the questions that you may have asked in mentor coaching is appropriate. For example, if you are asking questions very superficial and staying on the what, if, for example, the questions that you are asking are all about the situation, but you never ask questions about the person, the client, and that's the way that I see it differentiate in the coaching competency, the what and the who. What is the client bringing and who is the client being? So maybe mentor coaching, mentor coach would say, okay, maybe the questions that you were asking were not going deeper in terms of understanding better the client. But they may not go to ask you questions, what is happening to you? So when you get in the exploration about you and who you are being and how you are relating to the issue and what's happening to you, then is when you get into coaching supervision. And it can be some overlap. Sometimes some mentor coaches may do both. So that's a possibility too, that some people do both. They don't separate the two activities.
Yeah. Damien, I just, a thought occurs to me, and somebody else had asked this question about something to do with MCC. I was not quite sure in what context. And I would like to bring John Serrao into this conversation. And you know John. John was with us in the group with Leda and Subhash and Janet. John is now part of a batch that we are all working towards their MCCs. And one of the things that we do, and I think this is in continuation of what Sagar asked, which perhaps is why the confusion arises. I mean, Sagar, basically, it's not the job of a mentor coach to go beyond the competencies. It's about refining the competency capability of the coach. Whereas a supervisor, the responsibility of the supervisor is, as Damien mentioned, is about raising the awareness of the coach. And in terms of not only the client, it could be about the larger system. And it's a lot more than that. But what happens is when, like, for example, we find that when we are training people towards their mastery, one of the things that we deliberately do is to work with the coach in terms of sort of looking within themselves about their own awareness about the client at that point in time. So we are addressing not only the mentoring, but also the supervision. The reason why we do that is, for example, If during a conversation between a coach and a client, as Damien said, we all have judgments, and there is a negative judgment that is happening. The client is not stopping to for the coach to ask questions. The coach is itching to ask a question, and especially the coach is preparing for his assessment and stuff like that. Or the coach believes that the content is unimportant, context is important, but the client is talking about the drama. And there's a lot of frustration that is building up within the coach. Now, it's very important from a direct communication point of view, and especially at the mastery level, that the coach is able to sort of talk about that. But how do you talk about it appropriately? That's really the key question. It's not so much whether you should talk about it, yes, but how do you talk about it appropriately? So one of the conversations that we worked on was something similar, and every time something comes up. John, would you like to just expand it for the sake of clarity, if you are there still? I've unmuted you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So this also goes back to the book that Ram alluded to, which is Carl Rogers on Becoming a Person. And it talks about being vulnerable with your client. And part of the vulnerability has to do with moments when you might be irritated for whatever reasons. And if you are going to be authentic as a coach, how do you surface that irritation in a way that allows the client to see who you are as a person?
Yeah, exactly, John. Good to hear your voice. So exactly, it's a space to reflect on our reactions. What are our emotional reactions to our clients? So it's a space to see what is happening in our relationship with our clients. How we are not being effective with our clients, and it may be because unconsciously we are not conscious that they remind us somebody. So it can be different issues going on. So the idea that in coaching supervision, you explore your coaching. Now, I have a couple of questions here, Ram. One is, like, what is the benefit for listening if the coach supervisor can listen to a recording? And the answer is yes. As a supervisor, the coach can ask you, okay, can you listen to a session and give me feedback? That's possible too. But the focus would not be the competencies, would not be the skills. The focus will be a different focus. So that's the idea. Both activities, what they have in common is are about developing the coach. So the coach can develop by receiving mentor coaching and coaching supervision as two different activities. Now, particularly mentor coaching is required when you are getting trained as a coach, and then to renew your ACC credential and to apply for an MCC credential. So these are the time that ICF requires. It's mandatory to get mentor coaching. Again, when you're in coaching training, when you need to renew your ACC credential, or when you apply for your MCC credential. So the idea is that most of the time, once that you got your credential, you may not be hiring more mentor coaches, but you definitely want to get a coach supervisor. So for example, for somebody like Ram, for the MCCs in India, even though you already have your credential, your higher credential, you may not want to keep working with a mentor coach, but you definitely want to keep working and learning and bringing your cases to a coach supervisor. For people who get their PCCs, the same thing. You may not be ready for an MCC, and you may not want mentor coaching because you already got your PCC, but coaching supervision gives you the opportunity to reflect on who are you as a professional and keep growing and learning and developing, and the extent that you have a coach supervisor that makes you more effective as a coach and more successful in your career. So I see it as an opportunity, and ICF recognizes coaching supervision now for CCEUs. So every hour that you receive coaching supervision, you can use it as a CCU to renew your credential. Did you know that, Ram?
I was vaguely aware of it. I'm glad that you pointed it out. Yeah.
Okay, so now for everyone, if you want units of education, you can also get units of education. And interestingly, for now, that may change in the future. But for now, you get hours not only by receiving supervision, but also offering supervision. Because when you supervise, you're also learning. because the coach bring the same issue that you work as a coach when you're supervising coaches, because you're also a coach. So you learn a lot from each coaching session. As coaches, we learn a lot from each coaching session with our clients. But as supervisor, we learn a lot about coaching with each coaching that we do to each coaching supervision session that we work with our coaches. So that's the reason why ICF also recognized the job of a supervisor or the mentor coach to provide units of education. And they were asking me who pays for supervision. So most of the time, the person, the coach, is who pays for the coaching supervision. When they're part of organizations, the organization may pay for it. Or now, for example, CoachSource is including in their packages coaching supervision. So when they sell supervision, when they sell coaching, for example, they say, we're going to, with this big company, we're going to offer 10 coaches to work with 20 people. We're also going to charge the client for the supervision of these people. So now that is something that also CoachSource offers when they sell the services. So when you work in a company, if you're a third party, you say, okay, we are going to work in your company, we're going to work with 10 executives, we're going to provide 5 different coaches. You need to pay the coaches, but you also need to pay the supervision of the coaches. So that is charged to the client. Or in other parts, the company who is hiring can say, okay, I am going to pay and I am going to invest in coaching supervision for the coaches because this is a competitive advantage. So now when I sell my services, I say, okay, this company is cutting edge. If you want to work with our coaches, we also provide to our coaches coaching supervision. So that can be used as an argument to charge more or to have a competitive advantage compared with others because the people have this space of learning and reflection. So that's a different possibilities.
Damien, there's a question from Mervyn. I'm unmuting him about, I think, Mervyn, about peer coaching, something in relation to whether peers can coach. And there was Pramod had asked a question, can anybody supervise? I think those are interesting questions.
Well, the idea for supervisor is that you have a training as a supervisor. And I don't know how many are available now in Asia. There is the one that I went through 4 years ago. I went through one program, and that was the first time that was presented in the United States. So I was part of the first group trained as a coach supervisor in the United States. And interestingly, Ram, I went not because I wanted to be a coach supervisor. I went to do this training because I was in the board of directors of ICF, and I needed to learn what was it. It's like people here, they are listening for the first time, they don't know what this is, they cannot understand it. Well, I was in the shoes. They say, I don't understand what this is. So the best way for me to understand it as a leader of ICF was going through the training. So I went through the training and I fell in love with coaching supervision. And I said, if I can't just do coaching supervision, I would leave my mentor coaching clients, I would leave my clients in coaching, and I would shut the supervision. Because when you have experience and you have been doing it for 20 years like me, or for many years, it's really a great next step to do that, to supervise coaches, because you have been there before. So the idea is that I highly recommend people, if they want to become coaching supervisors, you want to have at least 500 hours of experience. You may or may not have a PCC as a credential, but you need to have a lot of experience. You cannot be a coach supervisor if you have not have at least 500 hours of experience working with clients. There are some options. There is the school where I went, it's called CSA, Coaching Supervision Academy. I know that they have some programs in India. I am starting my first program, my first global virtual program. I have been doing this program for 2 years in Latin America in Spanish. I am doing it for CoachSource in English, but I am also around going to start my first virtual coaching supervision training, what is completely virtual. It's a global program with people from all over the world. And I did it at the time where people can work in Asia too, because it's going to be 7 in the morning in Los Angeles. It will be 7:30 p.m. in India. So if anybody is interested, let me know and I can send you the information about that. And Ram, we can also talk together to think about the possibility to offer something to your network.
Absolutely.
Why we want to talk after we finish the call, we can think about that possibility too. But this program is a global virtual program where you do everything virtual. It's approved by the EMCC, have the EMCC Quality Award. It's a long process to get that award. So that means that the program follow very quality standards. And the program you have to meet for every week for 9 months. So it's a very extensive program, a very demanding program, but really help people to get trained and to become very effective coaching supervisors. Every week is a different activity. 1 week is lecturing, 1 week is practicing triads, like that we have in mentor coaching. Triad practice, but in coaching supervision, where one is a supervisor, the other is the coach, and the other is an observer and provide feedback. The other is a demonstration. When we get a coach, I get a coaching supervisor from all over the world, the most experienced coaching supervisors, to do demos, where they demonstrate coaching supervision. And that's something that I can also offer around today. We didn't have time, but I can come back and I can do a demo, because you will really understand it if you see it in action.
No, so we will, Damien, what we will do is, as a part of this session, in continuing sessions, we will have you come across, and we will also talk about, people have asked about, are they formal certification programs? ICF doesn't offer them, but EMCC does offer, and as Damien said, he is qualified to offer those programs. And one of the things that I'll be discussing with him is to probably get him to offer through Kocharya these programs in India. By the way, Mervyn, you had a question. Would you, if you still have the question, would you like to ask?
Ram, I also put my email in the chat room. If anybody have any question later, I am happy to answer any question that people may have later. Maybe something come up for you.
Absolutely.
And you have a question, I'll be very happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Mervyn?
I think that my question really revolved around, in the coaching community, I've come across many people that have substantial backgrounds in either various forms of psychology, particularly clinical psychology, social work, people that have extensive experience of many thousands of hours or years of actually working in supervision kind of formats. And it seems to me that, you know, without going through the whole program and redoing things that people are really already highly skilled in, whether there is a shortened version of working with those competencies where people have, as I say, substantial backgrounds, and being able in the coaching community to convert those particular competencies into a more of a coaching frame. So it's really, you know, that I think that is the crux of my question. It's not like starting off. There's thousands of people. It's probably more than that in the coaching community that have already been doing that kind of work for years, and they're doing it as coaching supervisors. But there doesn't seem to be, to my knowledge anyway, any formal way of capturing that past experience and bringing the wealth of that and into the coaching community through a formalized program.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And okay, let's see. The ideal situation is where, even though you have the experience, you still go just to get a specific training. Like, for example, for me, in my case, I had 2 masters, a PhD, a license clinically, and still I went for my coaching training. Like, when I went to get trained as a coach, I was working for a company, PDI, Personal Decisions International, and I work in India. I went to work there twice with Personal Decisions International, doing training for managers on coaching skills. And I was an executive coach, and the reason why I was doing it was because I was a psychologist, and I have my license, and I have my experience. But when I left the company, even though I have all of the experience, I didn't have any credential, I didn't have any credibility. So it's an issue of credibility. If you want to, like in my case, even though I have all of this stuff, I still went and I got trained as a coach from scratch, because I want to get my PCC and I needed the coaching training format that I say required.
Let me
finish the idea. So even though, so that was many years ago. And so that was for coaching. And even though I also was a coach, I was a supervisor for many years, being trained with many psychological tools, I still went to training because this is very specific and it's different, clinical supervision than coaching supervision, even though some of the skills are similar. So what I agree with you If some of the skills that you need to demonstrate are similar, still the context, the way you do it is different. And I have as an example, as a testimony, both of my parents who are both psychologists. Both of them went through coaching training, even though they didn't feel they needed to do it, they did anyways in Argentina, where they are. And then they came to my coaching supervision training. And both of them graduated from the program, and both of them had a lot of experience, of years of experience as supervisors, clinical supervisors as psychologists. But they said coaching was different, and they really appreciated going through the training because that gives them different tools and different ways to work that is not the same that supervising psychologists. Supervising coaching is different than supervising psychologists. So this program gives you that, that opportunity. Now, EMCC as an organization may recognize some of the work that has been done as a therapist or as a psychologist in terms of coaching, in terms of supervising psychologists. They may recognize some of the hours. So I think it's case by case. In my case, when I applied for my credential, all of my hours were only supervising coaches. But there is a possibility when I apply for a credential with EMCC that they may accept some hours that were supervising others that were not necessarily coaches. So now I answer the question. I want to be sure that I finish answering the question before I answer the second question. You have a follow-up?
I mean, just to put a stop to it in terms of other people's questions, I don't think that there's an issue about the issue of coach training. That isn't what I was going on about getting a professional frame within the ICF, for example. My question really related specifically to where the coaching experience was there, and I think we've kind of had the conversation. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I know you didn't ask about coaching, but I use that as an example because it's the same thing. Many people say, I don't need coaching training. I have been an executive for many years. I don't need coaching training. I am a psychologist. So and coaching supervision is the same thing. I have been a psychologist for many years. I don't need coaching supervision training. So that's what I think. And this is my personal opinion, not the truth, okay? It's just my humble and personal perspective. And I think that ICF or EMCC will require that, but that's something else.
Okay.
We have a few minutes before we finish.
Yeah, Damien, all good things have to come to an end. We are pretty much on top of that, as it were. And thank you for sparing this time so early in the morning for you. And we'll stay on in a call, the two of us, after others leave. The password I have already put down for the whole session. The first part is super, S-U-P-E-R. The second part is G-O-L-D. And it was not picked up from the air. It is Damien's surname is Goldberg. So I picked up the gold from the Goldberg. So it is super gold is the password for today. I think it reflects the quality of the conversation that we have had as well. And thank you for all your wonderful questions. We are almost there. And thanks a lot. So I'll stop the recording at this point in time because Damien and I are going to stay on this line after the rest of you depart. Thank you. Bye-bye.